So very warm welcome back, everyone. Hope my audio is audible. If any issues, just let me know. So last week we covered the topic of React state as well as properties, and really today's session is really deep diving into some of the same concepts and really making it solidified as well as sort of understanding them from the more practical and everyday use in React applications. So before we go there, real quick, let's recap of what we covered, right? So we had built this application where we could write a greeting for a user on our screen, and and that greeting would show up. That greeting would show up on the screen for the user whose name we type into the input box. So right now it says welcome Jane. We could change it to John and it would say have a nice day. And while doing this, we went through the concepts of parent and child component, what it means to be a parent, what it means to be a child, and how parent can pass properties to child, and how child can communicate back using those properties to parent. And we looked at use state, which is useful for um, defining state variable of a React component. And state variable is something that updates what is defined and what is displayed on the browser screen. So in our case, John or any name, here in this case ABC, is a state variable, and changing that variable's value from ABC to John updates the display on the screen as well. And this updation of displaying on the screen is in technical terms known as rendering or re-rendering. And React is really, really great at handling such re-renders and such 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 fluid data to visual displays. So let's look at this. We use state to do the uh, variable mapping. Our original value of the variable was Jane, and we change it to John or ABC. Very similarly, we looked at another example where we defined another variable who, which was named as value, and initially it was set at 1. And whenever we click this button, that value updates to +1. So right now it's 4, then it 8. So I think we are doing multiply by 2, not +1. So we were doing multiply by 2. So we were updating the state's value from 1 to 2 to 4 to 8. So this is very brief of a state. And today's lesson is taking the same concept one step further. So before we dive into the today's session, we need to really think of what state means to us in more clearer pattern. So uh, let's take the example of our house. In our house, right, we have thermostat, which tells us what is the current temperature inside the house, and it allows us to adjust the temperature up and down. So in winters, you can increase the temperature so the house becomes warmer, and in the summers you can bring it down to have a cooler house. If you think of this thermostat uh, example, right? The thermostat. our house is, so you imagine our house is a React application. What thermostat is holding is a state variable. So let's say your temperature, and I'm going to put it in Fahrenheit. So if you guys are more familiar with Celsius, I'll leave the calculation to you. So let's imagine that our thermostat is set at 70, and now it's winter time and we want to make house warmer. You increase the temperature. When you increase the temperature, we need to show that increased value from, let's say, 70 to 75 on our screen. So if you think of what really happened, you increase the uh, value of your thermostat. So your display of the thermostat is telling you 75. Very similarly, you change the name from Jane to John here, and now your screen is saying John. Internally, React has re-rendered to display this new information of John on the screen. Very similarly, internally, when you increase the thermostat, you are increasing the temperature of your entire house. So the state of the entire house from a cooler temperature to warmer temperature has changed. And so remember this term. So the state of your house has changed from cooler to warmer. Now, very similar to state, you are going to learn about another term is effect or side effect. So if you think of in terms of our example of thermostat, right? When you're bringing the temperature uh, higher, or you increase the fan speed in thermostat, your house has vents. And in those vents, you are starting to push more warmer air. So you did not manually push the warmer air inside the house. Instead, you just increase the temperature. So you change the state of the house from cooler to warmer. And in that action, you are now increasing, you are pushing more warmer air into the vent. So more warmer air going into the vent was directly a effect or side effect of you changing the state variable's value from 70 to 75. So now we are covering two things, state as well as effects. So these two terms can can be quite often related to each other when it comes to real world React applications. And one of the things that bind this together is something called hooks.
Hmm.
So hooks are something that allow you to change the state, allows changing the state, as well as running effects. So when we covered our example of use state last week, we briefly talked about this term called hooks. So use state, this keyword use state, this is a hook. So if we had to really look at the analogy of our house, what would you call as a hook? So maybe hook is the electricity that your thermostat as well as your boiler and other equipments can use to, or even simpler terms, hooks are maybe your power plugs in your house which all kinds of applications in your house can use to do all kinds of things. So you could use maybe coffee maker to make coffee using electricity, and you could. So going back to our house as example, your power plugs are your hooks, which allow you to run all kinds of effect. If you had a portable heater, you could heat your house using a power plug, or you could charge your phone, or you could turn on your TV. So these are the three terms that we are going to cover today. So what I explained you was very simple example using our house as a metaphor, but uh, now, let me see if there are any questions before I actually go to code and real examples. I want to stop here and allow you guys to. Yeah. I want to stop here and allow you guys to ask any questions. Are there any confusions on what could be a state versus effect versus hook? Maybe in terminologies of our house. And after that, we are going to see it in React. Okay. So moving on, maybe you'll have more questions when I actually explain the same thing using the React. So let's first quickly see. So you have a very similar homework example as well for this, but I want to sort of uh, do a different example. So imagine that you are like on Amazon or some website where you want to write some reviews for a product, and imagine that there's a product here. You can imagine anything that you like. And you said like, I really love it, and you give it, give a 5 star. So you select a 5 star here from this drop down and you submit. And now I have a one review which is 5 star. Like, one guy can say, I didn't like it. I didn't like it. And he gives 2 stars. And so now we got two reviews, 5 and a 2. So the average of 5 and a 2 is 3.5. So we are displaying all the review on our web page, as well as allowing user to enter a new review and also calculating the average on a fly. So let's look at our hooks and states and effects in this example. So in our application, going back to last week again, we have a parent component, which is app.jsx, and two child components, review form and review list. So review form is what you see in this line where you have a select button, select, as well as an input, as well as a submit button. And review list is what you see here, star plus its text. So these are two child components, and we are using them in our parent component app.jsx. Now we are going to learn about use effect as well as use state. So these two are hooks. Hooks or your power plugs. Use state is what we have used to display each individual review. So we have a review array that originally, when our application loads, is empty, so we don't see any review. And whenever a user types something and submits a review, we capture its value using add to review function and create a new review and set it back to our review array. So this syntax is something called spread operator, which creates a new array from existing array by adding additional elements. So let's look at the quick example. You guys not really there. Let's list const first array equal to 1 and 2. And we can define const uh, and if I want 1 and 2 be part of the first array, all I have to do is use the spread operator, which is 3 dots, and say first array. And then whatever the addition. So 1, 2, and 3. So if I check my second array now, it has 2 elements. And if I check my first array, it has those two elements plus second array has the number 3 as well. So that is what we are doing here. Uh, here is whatever reviews we have previously, please create me a new review array with additional review that user entered in my review form. So review form is a child component of app component. And let's look at the code of review form. So let's compare it with what we see on the screen. Review form has a write the review text, which is here, and then a select box and an input very similar to the input we had seen last week with Jan and John rating application example. And when user inputs that value in the selects this value and puts it in the and clicks on the button, we are calling the function defined in the parent function, which is add review, and we are updating our parent components review array. Any confusions on how the actual review is getting sent back to the parent component, which then is able to display the review using another child component called review list. Real quick, we are using use state to hold all our reviews. So those are our state variables that we want to absolutely display on the screen. And we have sent those state variable to review list component, which just looks over those reviews and displays them on the screen. And then we have a review form, which captures any new review and pushes it back to the parent component's review array. So whole flow of the code becomes like this. App component, it sends reviews to review list for display. As well as it's better. My apologies. As well as app component also takes new reviews from user via review form. So this is the very basic of how our application is being put on the on the browser. So with that, we have a review form and a review list. So very straightforward, displaying the reviews. Uh, I love, let's put it two. So both of these are very similar to what we had seen, Jane and John example, as well as this counter example, which is always getting multiplied by 2. What is interesting here is we are calculating this average on a fly whenever somebody enters. So let's say if somebody gives a 1-star review, I hate it. So my review dropped from 5 to 3.1 because average of, so if you do like uh, 5 plus 5 plus 11 divided by 3, if you do 3.66. So we are rounding it up to 3.7. So I got 3 reviews and total score of 11, 5 plus 5 plus 1, 11. So that's how I'm calculating the average. That is the magic of the second concept that we were talking. That is side effect. When you turn on your heat, your air vents in the house start to have more airflow and similar side effect. And we'll see, don't worry about this. We are going to see a lot of side effects or a lot of effects in the future as well. But this is just the guardrails. If there are no reviews, then just set the review to 0. But what I just did here is as a side effect of my reviews changing. So this is the syntax of use state, use effect. Sorry, this is the syntax of use effect. It has some function. Use effect has some function defined like this. And then the second parameter of the use state is a dependency array. So some variable here. This tells React to run this block of code every time something happens to this variable. So in our case, every time the review variable changes, React is going to run this code. How do we know that? So let's put it here. Console.log I ran. Let's clean this. And let's put I love it. And we got a log called I ran. Now let's do this thing. I hate it. And you see I ran. You see number 2 means it ran twice, got the same log twice. And if I did something here, we would get it 3 times, 4 times. So every time the review variable is being updated with new reviews from the user, this code block from line 10 to line 21 is getting re-executed. That's why it is critical for us to provide the dependency array and tell React that, hey, you should run this code only when reviews are changing. What is the another example of this, right? So going back to our house and our vent example, let's say you open your garage door. You don't want your vents to get hot air and your house to become warm just because you opened your garage door. You only want your house to get warm via your vents carrying more warmer air if you change your thermostat value. If you start your coffee maker, you don't want your house temperature to go up and your and hot air going to your vent. So That way, you are exactly telling your system, your React application, or your house to run that code only when the thermostat or review variable is changing. So that is a very crucial part of understanding use effect or side effect part in a React application. So what it means is we are updating something in our React application as a side result of user doing something in our app. In our app, the user is adding a new review and due to that new review, we are running the side effect so that we can recalculate the average stars of our product. And both of this use effect and use state are known as hooks. So these are the three crucial concepts of today. And I want you guys to think about what we just did right now in our application, how we use state and how we use effect. And both of them are known as hooks or or, or something that is allowing you to do certain activity in your house. So let me ask you guys if you guys really got this or understood this, because why I'm saying is because this is something that you are going to do over and over and several times in a React application. The concept of running the side effect in a React application is absolutely central to how you make a dynamic web application or mobile application. Because right now we calculated the averages on the fly using mathematical formula that we discussed here, 11 divided by 3. This is nothing but the same division. But in reality, in a real world application, you will be calling maybe API to uh, get reviews from database because your reviews are always getting saved here, right? So calling the API to get the reviews from database is a very common example of how you will use effect. Then you will use effect to do maybe one time activity in your React application. And we will, in upcoming lectures and more deeper concept, we are going to see examples of this. But I want you guys to get the clear understanding of role of use effect and how it allowed us to run a code when something happened to our state variable. Because if you understand this, then understanding this more deeper concepts are going to be much easier in the future. So yeah, with that, I'll stop for a few seconds and allow you guys to ask any questions. Maybe I'll stop recording and so that you guys are not